أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله أما بعد. So assalamu alaikum guys, thank you for joining us on another episode of Ummah in Exile. Today I kind of had the idea and we were kind of discussing, myself and Reggie, and we were kind of discussing this idea of essentially masculinity and how in a way in today's modern world it's being weaponized in a myriad of ways, whether it be the emphasis on physical masculinity and how it may carry a lot of toxic traits associated with it, whether we're talking about mental masculinity or whether we're talking about a spiritual masculinity. The latter two, which barely get any attention in today's modern society, even in the 21st century, in a supposed first world country like the United States, those latter two just really don't get touched on. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I thought that it was really important for us to go and discuss it today is because Islam essentially finds the answer and molds all three of those together in a way that's not toxic, in a way that's beneficial to society, and in a way that not just benefits oneself, but benefits those around them as well. Mm. So while we were discussing this, we did kind of pique the interest of another brother here. So if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, feel free to, and kind of what you're doing and why this topic in particular kind of interested you.
Yeah, so my name is Abhishek. I studied computer science at Michigan State. And basically, I built an app that helps men find their masculinity, find their purpose, and the most important thing that they could possibly think of to strive for. Mm. And then the app helps the man orchestrate the rest of their life towards that goal. Okay? So it's very random that you guys, like today, I just showed up saying what's up, and then you guys were over here doing a podcast on masculinity.
SubhanAllah.
I think that's fantastic. This is the concept of qadr, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Bringing people. I mean, I've known Abhishek for a few years now, and you know he's a mashallah very reflective person. So I think it's a great day to have you here. And you're passionate about this topic. We've talked about it before. I think in this modern society, every man should be passionate about this topic in one shape or form. I do want to take some time later in the discussion to actually talk about your app, you know, because I think we need more masculine innovation, like innovation driven into giving men structure and code and giving them purpose.
Yes,
right.
Yeah.
So I think this topic is a topic that's been not only slept upon, it's kind of like two extremes. On one side it's slept upon, exactly. On the other side it's abused.
Right. It's on one hand, people are trying to steal our masculinity from us.
Right.
And trying to indoctrinate the youth to believe that embodying masculine ideals is in a way oppressive.
Right.
Right? So this is so close to my heart because that's how I was raised. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, it's not my parents, right? But it's the rest of society. Like,
social pressure, yeah.
Social pressure, exactly. So in education, in media, even the essays you write in school, mm-hmm. right? If you're writing as a strong man, mm-hmm. right? You will not get the right feedback. I mean, people will look at you like you're some sort of extremist, mm-hmm. right? People will look at you like you're power hungry, you're a megalomaniac.
Yeah.
So narcissist.
That's a narcissist.
Thrown around
a control
so
freak.
Nowadays,
mm-hmm.
right? Yeah.
Right? But what's funny is if you're not a control freak, quote unquote, right? So if you're not somebody who basically reins in the environment around them to control it and move it towards a better purpose, towards a better direction, goal, then you're not a man.
Right.
Like, your wife will leave you. Like, your girlfriend will leave you.
Yeah.
No, really. Your kids will not look up to you.
I agree with you. I think this is actually, in order to kind of define masculinity, I think we do have to step a little back into the historical concept of what masculinity is, right? Across cultures, across religions, across societies, there has been overall a general framework for what masculinity is. We can identify a few key traits that make a man, right? Not a male, a man. There's a difference. Because a male is biology, manhood is character, right?
Right.
And I think whether you look at any society or whatever, any group in history, you will identify that a man is responsible, disciplined, right? Has characteristics of aggression, and I don't mean necessarily abusive or physical or whatever, aggression towards something. He's pursuing something. He's waking up every day to work the field. He's joining campaigns, marching thousands of miles, right? There is a sense of purpose that has to drive man to get him out of his house. And I think this is actually deeply embedded in our biology, right? You look at our physical composition, our bodies are made to challenge the world. You look at our mental composition, we don't thrive in office spaces. We thrive being outside, marching, working, tiring, having a vision, right? Providing is another key feature of men. Men feel most useful when they have a family, when they have someone that they provide for, right? So this aspect of responsibility, manly responsibility, is what has carried empires throughout history, right? And it's not until recently that it came under attack heavily. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
Well, I agree with you that that the masculine ideal needs a goal to strive towards, to manifest itself in its entirety. Have you ever had a time where you're just like kind of goalless, kind of aimless, where you didn't know exactly what you wanted to strive for in the next like year, maybe next month, or today? When you look at the worst times of your life, or at least when I look at the worst times of my life, I find that I had no direction. There was nothing for me to work towards, or nothing I thought was important enough for me to work towards. That's when there was laziness. That's when there was unhappiness, periods of sadness that some people like to call depression.
Vice,
right?
Usually, right?
Right, yeah.
That's when it creeps in the most.
Yes,
men.
exactly.
Yeah.
So when you look at any of the great men that we remember and we respect, these are all people who strove towards goals. And even if they didn't meet those goals, we still look at them as martyrs. Right? We still have respect for them because these are people who strove.
Yes.
So yes, I agree with you that the masculine needs a goal. But where I disagree with you though, is that I don't think this attack on masculinity is a recent thing.
Okay, elaborate on that.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the ancient Greeks, right? You look at some of the Roman civilization, and you look at some of the stories that are talked about in the Quran and in the Bible. And these great empires fell when what happened? What happened to the people of Lot? What happened to the ancient Greeks? Men stopped being men. Right? This always happens. This always happens. It's a cyclical nature.
Right.
It's a cyclical nature of history.
It's true.
And this is what we're seeing in the West today. So how does it start? For us, it started with media. Right? It started with whoever's like, or the different groups that are controlling the different aspects of media. It started with them slowly putting out more and more risky content. Right?
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
What's the agenda?
Genuinely, I mean, my belief is that this is going towards some kind of spiritual war. I think it's an otherworldly agenda. I don't think people know this. I don't think it's a conscious thing.
This is why I asked.
I don't think it's a conscious thing. I think
I'm poking the bear a little bit.
I think what happens is the spiritual realm, right, basically impregnates the minds of the people in the physical realm.
Right.
And it's up to the person, it's up to each individual to guard their mind against an evil seed. Right? So it's like, some people guard their minds and some people don't.
Right.
Some people believe in God and some people don't.
Right.
So it's the people who don't believe in God, I feel like, allow more and more unconventional, more and more far left type liberal things to, manifest in the society. No more tradition. Men and women, they're equals.
The murkiness of the
yes,
roles
bring in more and more gray area.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, now, what do you mean that it's only black and white? What do you mean that like men
What's
are men
a
and
man?
women?
What's a woman?
Right?
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't think it's like I don't like to blame anybody. I don't think it's an individual phenomenon. I don't think there's some puppeteer, orchestrating like the media or anything else. I don't think it's one person. I think it's one entity.
I don't think it's one person either.
I think it's a group.
No. I think it's
an entity.
Yeah, I think it's the devil.
And I think we all know what the entity is. It's shaitan.
Yes.
It's shaitan, and it's large corporations that have essentially greed has taken over their vision and their mind, and that is in and of itself a form of shaitan. You see, because shaitan, whether he physically comes in a physical embodiment to these individuals, or whether he comes through a tangible physical object that entices an individual in the path of shaitan, that is how shaitan captures one individual. You see, so I think that all of you guys literally just hit on so many facets: the mental, the spiritual, the physical. Think about it, guys. If you're just doom scrolling on TikTok 24/7, right, and all you're seeing is essentially this crap that is meant to demoralize you, it's meant to break down your ethics.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen to your morals? What do you think is going to happen to your ethics? Is it going to shatter? Is it going to stay strong? Is it going to be maintained? No, the algorithm has affected so many people, right?
Yeah.
And while I don't want to make this necessarily an algorithm or tech or social media or media focused podcast in general, I think it must be stated that these things have a huge effect on us subconsciously, right?
Yeah.
And we were hitting on this, that the soul puzzles scientists. It's not a quantifiable thing. It's not something that we can just measure, right? But we so desperately want to figure out these unknowns, right? And how do we figure out the unknowns is typically through manipulation of the masses. Mm-hmm. And one of the most, in my opinion, and you asked the question of why is this being targeted?
What's the agenda,
right? Well, why is there an agenda, if there is one? And my belief is because men, when they are driven by a goal, when they have a focus, are typically unstoppable.
Yes.
Typically, they are unstoppable. This is not to say that women are not. Women are just as unstoppable. If we look at the history of the Sahaba, during the time of the Rasul ﷺ, okay, during the time of the Prophet, typically the woman would be hidden in a building, correct? During times of war, right? And the men are out in the battlefield. And there may be one or two men left as bodyguards for the woman. That's typically how things were done back in the day. So this was just an occasion where a Sahabi was put as guard of the woman, and he was not up to the task when an intruder came, and he faltered. He literally broke down and he hid.
Right.
His name wasn't mentioned, obviously, but I mean, just to show you the hidden nature of preserving one's sins, I guess, if you want to call it that.
No, it is, yeah.
But what ended up happening was a female Sahabiya picked up a sword and started fighting off the intruder.
Right.
You see, so there are certainly forms of masculinity or femininity displayed in both genders. Certainly,
Sure. I think I think men, any human being is born definitely with a genetic predisposition to one or the other based on the gender that you have.
Right.
Right. That being said, environment plays a huge role. Certain men are more effeminate. Certain women can be more masculine. Now that doesn't mean what I say is the exception and not the rule, right? The rule is that most women will fall within a feminine category and most men will fall within a masculine category. But there's a spectrum there as to how much a man can cultivate his masculinity and as to how much a woman can cultivate her femininity, right?
Yes.
What I think has changed drastically for the worse, nowadays in particular, is this murkying of the waters. This idea that moral ambiguity, social ambiguity, the subjectivity of gender roles or gender itself even, right, is widespread, especially in a country here like the United States or some other parts of the West. And why is that harmful? Because, as you said, if men have a purpose, men are unstoppable. When I ask the question, what's the agenda? Some people may call me sexist, but I really don't care, to be honest. I think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created the two genders for a purpose. He says this very clearly, right? Men are the go-getters. Men are the movers and shakers of history. Men are the ones who create change and enable change. This is the truth. That doesn't mean there haven't been women who've done it, but statistically, let's be honest, it's one woman for every 1,000 men, right? What does that mean? That means that men have a very specific role to go and give a vision to society. Women's role is very different. Women's role isn't to give a vision to society. Women's role is to stabilize it. Okay? I'll give you a perfect example, right? Let's say you get married, you move into an apartment complex, and all of the neighbors are single men. You're probably not going to feel very safe, right? Because men have destructive tendencies overall. And if a man, there's a quote that I really like that says, a man will burn the world to feel the warmth in its fire, right? Or if a man disciplines himself, he doesn't have to burn the world. He can shape it.
Yeah, something needs to quell that anger.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So women, on the other, if you move into the same apartment complex and you see a man, but then he has a wife,
Trustworthy.
suddenly
family
you
man.
feel that this is a family man. This is a stable man. Right?
Exactly.
This is someone who has some sort of responsibility on his shoulders. He has something to look after. So you're not as worried about his destructive tendencies, right? That's the role of women. Women are nurturers. Women are nurturers. Women are supposed, you get a house, she makes it a home, right? That's not the role. We know how we live. We live very minimalistically. To this day, me and my wife, she gets really shocked as to how minimalistically I can live as a man, right? I don't need anything, but they do, and it's beautiful. You walk into a house that a woman designed, it's beautiful. You walk into a house a man designed, it's a couch and a TV.
And a PlayStation,
you know?
and that's
And I think look, Allah has designed these genders for a reason. If he wanted to, he's all powerful. He could have made one gender. He could have made a unisex species. And there are unisex species in the kingdom of animals and insects and bacteria, whatever you want to call it, right? Why couldn't humans have been asexual, right? And have asexual? No, there's a purpose to the genders. So this ambiguity of the genders today is one of the most destructive concepts that society has come with, and I think it's for the sole purpose to tame men into not challenging the systems of shaitan.
to not just challenge that, to live against the will of Allah. That's the end goal. That's really the end goal.
I agree with that.
It's 100%.
It's hard for me to put my finger on one end goal, right? But I think if we can look at if we zoom out and just look at what's going on, it's just, you see good and evil at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And it's like, evil wants to reign, and the only way to do that is by tamping down men.
I agree.
So I think that's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, who resists oppression? Who resists evil?
Right.
By hand.
Exactly.
Right? With spears in hand and shield.
Right.
It's men.
Yeah.
When you tame that spirit, when you destroy that spirit, you've destroyed the resistance to the forces of evil. And I think it's as simple as that. I think that's the agenda, right? Now, on the other hand, because I do want to give our sisters their due here as well, even though we're talking about masculinity, the destruction of femininity has its own consequences. Because now society has no nurturing spirit, no heart, no kindness to mold it, to give it warmth, right?
Yes.
Taking the woman away from the child, having the child being raised by the state, right? The school system, whatever you want to call it. Instilling upon children their own morals, their own vision, their own set of values that historically used to belong to the family and now belongs to who? The government, the country, the state, whatever you want to call it, the system, right? And I think that's all intentional. The destruction of the family unit is intentional, in my opinion. And what was the main shield in the way of that? Men. Men are the shield of the family. And this is something the Prophet ﷺ told us. He said, each of you are a shepherd. The man is the shepherd of his family, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, الرجال قوامون على النساء, that men are made guardians, protectors, leaders of women. So now that we got here, let's pivot, I think, to what is masculinity according to the sacred tradition, right? What is masculinity according to our Creator? How does He define masculinity for us?
It's to guard our souls, right? Because if you as a man can guard your soul, then you guard what's around you. You keep what's around you safe, your family, your community. You know, because the way humanity propagated throughout the world was in communities. It wasn't even just in family units. It was groups of families, right? All acting in unison. Now, what happens to the bunch of apples when one gets rotten?
They all spoil.
Right. So I think it's our job as men to make sure we don't spoil for the rest of the apples in the basket.
I think the most powerful ayah that would answer, I would say, at least how to get on the road to masculinity, or at least what masculinity is all about. And this is also inclusive of femininity as well, is Yadullah ma jama'a. Allah is with the people who form up and gather together, you see.
Right.
The reason why I'm saying this is because, again, it's very easy to target the sheep that wanders by itself. That's the one that the wolf loves to go after. Reggie always tells me this, you know, and I've always kind of stuck with that once when you've told me it. That when an individual kind of seeks a path of masculinity or of, you know, training oneself or fulfilling a goal, it typically fails or is harder to get the ball rolling by oneself. But when they are surrounded by a strong structure, a strong net of individuals, that is what is feared. That's actually what builds strength, and that's what builds ultimately a strong progression towards what you and what we have essentially agreed upon, which is warriors towards a set goal. You see, I do want to point out to just to kind of backtrack about why is there again this agenda against everything, against masculinity in general. I want to point out to a very harsh reality of history, which was the Crusades. Why were the Crusades so successful? Because the Pope essentially rallied a whole bunch of men driven under one goal, which was religion. The hardcore extremist fundamentalist outlook of we must free the Holy Land. So all of these men were driven on one goal, and why were they so successful in the mass slaughter of Jews and Muslims in Jerusalem? Because they were all united. That's what people are really scared of. And to answer again, now kind of going back to your question of like what is, in my opinion, what do I define as masculinity? It's the gathering of a group of like-minded individuals. It doesn't just have to be men. Men, you know, masculinity is not just defined as your lifting strength or strength in numbers necessarily. It's masculinity is defined as a mindset, a drive, a goal that everybody works towards as a unit, as a team. That's what, in my opinion, is defined as masculinity. And that's also what the Rasul ﷺ really drove. Did he ever go into battle by himself as one? No, he would always make dua for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first, and then his sahaba would be to his right and to his left, following and listening to the orders. It was only when orders were disobeyed and the goal was shaky that we saw what happened in the second battle. And I went there, subhanAllah, and they described the whole battle and the situation, how it broke down, Had the archers remained there, Khalid would have never advanced. Radiallahu anh.
And why did the archers leave? This is a key thing, right?
Please tell
The
us.
second battle of Islam is the Muslims are actually winning for majority of the battle. And the Prophet ﷺ, at the beginning of the battle, had given a specific instruction to the archers at the top of Mount Uhud. He had said, whatever happens, do not leave this position unless I tell you to. Right? The archers, who are basically have like a bird's eye view of the battle happening, see that the enemy is being routed. And what enters their hearts? Al-Ghanima, right? The war loot. So in their mind,
Dunya, essentially.
Dunya, the world entered their heart. They saw the enemies being routed. The people who are on the ground are going to get the war loot before us. So they started rushing down the mountain to get the war loot, thinking that victory was at hand. The moment they did that, Khalid ibn Walid, who later will become one of the greatest commanders of Islam, right? But at that time was an enemy, masterfully and strategically now strikes the flank of the Muslims with his cavalry. And this is a massacre where over 70 companions are killed, right? Because of this mistake of a man faltering, or a group of men faltering in the direction of their commander, one, their unity of purpose, and forgetting the real purpose, which is the pleasure of God, the guardian of the soul, as he mentioned earlier, and chasing the world instead. I think one of the most destructive, this is a beautiful analogy in my opinion, because I think one of the most destructive things that a man can do is chase the world. Because chasing the world will never stop yielding goal after goal after goal, and I think it becomes empty and destructive.
That's a really good point. And you know what? That is a direct analog of what people do when they scroll on TikTok and Instagram Reels. Every new reel is like a new goal, right? And it creates the same. It's a goal without substance. It's a goal that just spikes your dopamine and then tanks it. So just like what you do with chasing the world. When you chase worldly pleasures, right? You talk about. I mean, there's many different philosophies, many different schools of thought that talk about how chasing the world and chasing worldly pleasures never is the final end. Right? It's never the fulfilling one.
Yes.
And you see this spoken about in every religion.
Right.
Right. The monotheistic ones, even the polytheistic ones, they all talk about
universal.
It's universal. Right. It's a universal like reality. Yeah. Everybody knows it. So, how do we find ourselves when we're chasing the pleasures of the world? Right. I think you don't even have to think necessarily about the exact action that you're doing. You don't have to think, for example, okay, I'm scrolling Instagram Reels. That's bad. I'm eating brownies, right? You just think about how it makes you feel when you do it. If you're doing something and your soul doesn't feel right when you're doing it, right? Or you feel like a little crappy afterwards, then you're probably doing something wrong.
Yes.
Right.
It's like you feel it.
You literally
your
feel
intuition,
it.
right? Yeah.
What happens when you go to the gym? Let's say you feel like total crap for a week. You hit the gym one day. How do you feel?
So good.
Amazing.
You feel amazing.
Yeah. So good, especially with a pump.
Exactly. So it's like it's built into us.
Right.
When I hear people saying, "Oh, how do I get started?"
Start.
Oh, how do I?
You gotta start.
How do I get strong? How do I lose weight? How do I do this? How do I study? Come on, dude. Dude, just do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Just do it. Right? Because everything else you do, including asking those questions, even asking those questions, you're pursuing worldly pleasure.
Yes.
All right, let's think about how, right? When I go, let's say I have a therapist, right? Let's say I'm like a little man who wants a therapist. All right, I go to a therapist. I'm telling them, oh yeah, like, I can't lose weight. I'm trying so hard to lose weight.
Yeah.
But I just keep eating food.
Right.
I just keep reaching for those potato chips. Right? Oh yeah, I just keep sitting on the couch. What are you doing there? As a man, what are you doing? Going and sitting in front of another guy or woman, right? And telling them all your problems. What does telling people your problems actually do for you? does it bring anything into? Does it like what is this? Does it make your problems more real? Like, does it make you finally courageous enough to face them? No, it's like something you've known all along, but you are just indulging in the feeling of talking about them. Okay? And why is that indulgent? Because you're making it so that other people care about your problems. You're paying somebody to care about your problems.
Right.
That's what you're doing.
Right.
Right? So...
I think you opened up a few very important avenues of discussion.
Right, but let me finish that for 1 second.
Go ahead.
So instead of paying somebody to listen to your problems and make them feel more important, just go fix them as a man. Right? If it's so hard for you to stop eating potato chips, let's say you weigh 600 pounds, right? A really big guy, morbidly obese, you can't walk. I know you can at least get up, or at least try, maybe use like a couple, use that walker thing, whatever it is. Just get up, do that a couple times, okay? Try not to eat food. What happens? I mean, you fix your problems. As men, most of the time, the vast majority of the time, we are able to fix our problems. And when we don't do that, and we find other distractions, whether that's thinking about the problem, whether that's eating a couple of brownies or potato chips or pizza slices, or sitting around and telling your boys, oh yeah, like this and that, I'm lazy, I'm this. No, you're just indulgent. You're you're pleasuring yourself. That's what it is.
I think you've opened up a few very important avenues of discussion. Number one, support systems, right? I do agree with both of your points, and I think they go together. Number one, men, just like any other human being, are social creatures. They need a support system, right? Now, I think modern society has feminized our support systems as men. For example, therapy, and not to disparage anyone who does it necessarily, right? But I think therapy is not necessarily fit for a man as a support system. Let me tell you why. I think men, where they differ from women, is that women like enabling support systems. Support systems that enable them. Support systems that, essentially like give credibility to their ideas and their feelings.
Yes.
For men don't need to hear that their feelings are right.
In fact, that's dangerous.
It's dangerous. Men need support systems of action.
Yes.
Right? This is the difference. Men need other men to give them a kick in the ass and tell them, you're getting your ass to the gym with me.
What are you going to do about it, bro?
Right?
Type of attitude, exactly.
Actually, a man needs criticism against another man. This is an Islamic principle, by the way.
Yeah.
The Prophet ﷺ tells us to always advise our brothers. Not to, what's the word? Verify their feelings or vindicate their feelings or whatever. If they're wrong, you have to tell them, you are doing something. You're lazy, brother. You're fat, brother. You're not doing enough. You're not praying enough. You have to tell your brother straight on. You don't have to be rude about it. No one is saying that you have to be an asshole, right? But you have to have genuine care and intention for your brother in a way that's productive for him. Not in a way that just indulges him in his feelings.
Or demoralizes him, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very important avenue to open for the modern Muslim man. We don't have that a lot nowadays, right?
Like, the way I think about it, for women, right? You can't criticize women the same way you can criticize men.
No, you cannot.
It does not work.
Trust me, you'll learn that when you're married too.
It doesn't work.
It does not
right?
work.
You get into trouble, let's say.
They're not your boys.
Right. So with women, it's like you need to be nurturing and supportive.
Correct.
And that works for women.
It does. It works.
But you do that with a man. What you do is you tell him, you're doing really good right where you are.
You've destroyed his spirit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
his hunger.
The way I think about it is like a woman, right? Is like a flower, right? Get too much light, too much, like whatever, right? You'll ruin it. But for a man is like a tool, like a knife, who needs to be sharpened.
It's a very good
right?
analogy.
How do you sharpen a knife? You put it under stress. You shave off the blunt edge. Right?
You know, there's a quote in the Bible, by the way, that says, "As sword sharpens sword, so does man sharpen man.
Yeah, look at
You
that.
know?
Yeah.
And I really
You
like
find
that.
yourself a friend who wants to be your grindstone.
Right.
Not like your girlfriend.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Not a woman.
You know, but you just hit on something really important though,
Yeah.
which is you do need to find some people who can make you stronger, but they need to lead you into healthy avenues.
Mm-hmm.
All right, because again, this again ties into the whole idea of toxic masculinity. Even people that drive you towards masculine type traits, in my opinion, could be leading you down a very, very bad road. Take, for example, a dude like Andrew Tate. Like, in my opinion, this guy became Muslim and, like, wowed a whole bunch of, Muslim youth, essentially. Targeted, like, a whole huge Muslim youth population. And sure, yes, he did make them become physically fit. Like, for sure. All right? But, gambling degeneracy, OnlyFans, like, these were never things a lot of people have heard of, but he brings it into his podcast. He brings it. So you need to surround yourself with positive energy, with a good positive force of a group of people that will lead you in a good direction, that will lead you toward the haqq, that will lead you towards justice, right? Because if you surround yourself with a bunch of, like, meatheads, then you're setting a standard for yourself of what you want to become.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to surround yourself with individuals who don't just want to strengthen their muscles, they want to strengthen their mind. They want to strengthen their community. They want to strengthen the society around them as a whole. They don't just want to strengthen themselves. It's not all about ego. When they walk in the door of a masjid, ego death, right then and there. It's literally just Allah. Like, unified. Dude, imagine individuals unified on a strict goal, whether written or not, whether sworn to or not. That is a unstoppable force. No matter what type of barriers society may set for that group of men or that group of women, again, I don't want to go and limit this conversation just to men. But when those individuals gather, you don't need to be a huge number. You just need to be what's the saying? Quality over quantity.
I agree.
All you need is 20 men who are really on a set goal. Hey guys, let's meet up every weekend and clean the masjid, right? It's
By the way,
one thing.
I'm looking something
No,
up.
please.
Sorry.
I know. I saw the glimmer in your eyes, and it got me excited. So, again, when the individuals begin to focus as a group on small things, they begin to find small successes, and upon those small successes, they can build the foundation for larger ones. But you got to start small, and I feel like that's what we're doing. Essentially, is we need to start off with small wins, like cleaning the mosque, so that way we can move on to bigger wins, like speaking in front of a city hall, because these are things that challenge us, right? Say, for example, do you like public speaking? I know Reggie loves public speaking.
No, I'm the worst at public
You're not?
speaking.
Okay. Yeah, you're here now on this podcast, right? You're challenging yourself.
Right.
Who pushed you to challenge you?
I guess you guys did.
I guess so.
Yeah.
But why? We pushed you to challenge you in an area that you felt like, hey, this is an interesting subject to me, right? That's a positive motion right there.
Right.
You're already working on an app. You see, surrounding yourself with individuals who maybe, I'm not working on an app personally, I would love to, I have so many ideas. But surrounding yourselves with individuals who will, again, propel you towards that positive force. Like, what more could you ask for? And that's that type of healthy masculinity that I'm targeting and that I wish to go and seek for people to find at the end of this video.
I think you do make a good point because, one, personally, I've seen the effects of bad company. And I've felt them. I lived through them. And it takes you a very long time to break out of that, the mold that that being in bad company puts you in.
Right.
But, yeah, like, I think as men, there's going to be a lot of very attractive male figures. For example, Andrew Tate.
Yes.
My theory is that Andrew Tate became so successful even while espousing a more toxic masculinity, is because there's so much lack of masculinity in the world that as soon as there's like one magnet of masculinity, and then
everybody latched onto it.
Just because he just happened to be the strongest magnet. But now let's say that in every household, masculinity was taught. It was emphasized, by the father, or by, if it's not the father, by the community. Then somebody like Andrew Tate would quickly be like ousted as somebody who has a couple too many problems, right? Because I think Andrew Tate does have good points. Many of them I agree with. But when it comes to women, when it comes to mainly that. When it comes to women, I don't agree with everything he says. So how do you judge, right? As a man, how do you judge the external factors that are influencing you? You're going to be best equipped to judge those if you've already been trained in the proper way, right? I've already been trained in proper masculinity. Now I can look at Andrew Tate and say, hey, I agree with a lot of what this guy says, but the way he talks about women, that's just not right.
By the way, I finally, sorry for keeping I just remember that a while ago while I was hearing you guys' points. I remember a quote from Yukio Mishima. I don't know if you guys know Yukio Mishima. Very manly Japanese poet, philosopher in the 1950s, 1960s. Extremely manly guy. Has this very famous video online where he's like, I don't want to die in a bed. Like, he's like the modern man, like dies fat and lazy. He's like, men, I need to die in battle and whatnot. I just remember I came across this quote a long time ago of him talking about Islam and masculinity. And he's not Muslim, by the way. But I just want to read the quote, if you guys don't mind.
Please go for it.
He says, Islam is a pure manly religion, and I always liked it. There is something strange in mosques' architecture. He says most of them are copies of the Hagia Sophia in Constantinople, right? Endless variations of the Byzantine theme with the additional minarets, he says. It must be that Muslims are celebrating in this way their biggest triumph over Christianity. Debatable, by the point that he makes. He says the mosque of Aurangzeb in India, with this point of view, isn't an exception. One of its walls is from the remains of an old Hindu temple. So what do you think I found inside the mosque? He says. The absolute void. And this was always to me an expression of an absolute cold asceticism. Here, in an empty, dark space, far from the flickering noise of idolatry, of Hinduism and Christianity, I regained my ability to think, feel, and understand. I remembered Nietzsche's thoughts on the ascetic void. Will to nothingness, disgust to life, right? He's going hardcore with these terms. Riot against fundamental conditions of being. The mosque was the materialized thought of this. So essentially, Mishima is speaking to this rugged masculinity that's serving only the purpose of God, essentially. It's detached from the world, right? And going to Andrew Tate and these different figures, there's a very key point to make there, right? I think anything that is void of Allah, of God, in its core will fail or will be corrupt at some point. Any movement, any ideology, whatever it is that starts without God at its core will ultimately become corrupt, including masculinity, including a push to better yourself as a man, right? And this is what leads to the toxic other side of the extreme, not the feminine man, but the oppressor, the tyrant, right? The man who abuses his masculinity. We have on the effeminate side, we have the man who never embraces it. On this side, we have the man who abuses it, right? And in the middle is Islam, is the balance, right? It's perfectly fine, for example, for a man to cry. It's perfectly fine for a man to show emotion. Our Prophet did, very often. There's the example where a group of Bedouins comes to him, right? And they see him playing with his grandchildren. And he's kissing his grandchildren. So the Bedouin, they start, you guys kiss your grandchildren? Making fun of him. And he says, you don't? And he says, no, we don't. Like this like tough, manly guy, we don't kiss. He says, I feel sorry for you that Allah has deprived you of mercy from your heart. Right? That you can't even kiss your own kid and your own progeny. You know, that's how, and that type of manhood is destructive. That's the type of manhood that burns the world. Right? The manhood, the Islamic manhood. We've been going through ayat of Quran and prophetic examples. I think one of the most powerful descriptions of manhood in the Quran is a man is responsible. He has responsibility, right? He's true to his word. We forget this. This is something that's very neglected in the modern world.
Yes.
Oaths, keeping your word as a man. Back in the day, how did you make contracts?
Shake.
Okay.
Shake on it.
Nowadays, you need 30,000 lawyers and whatever, and you still cannot trust that you won't be litigated. But men, even adversaries, even enemies, had a chivalrous code that they respected each other upon their word. Salahuddin, when King Richard the Lionheart fell sick, his advisors go to him and they say, Salahuddin, this is the perfect time to strike. The king is sick. Let's go. Let's take advantage of it. You know what he says? He says, send him the best physicians I have in my court. Let him regain his health, and I will fight him as an equal. Right? This idea of the chivalrous enemy. That you are not fighting for the sake of the world. You're not fighting for the sake of glory or ego. You're fighting just because this is your duty, man. That's what you are. You're a man. You have to fight. It doesn't have to be swords and shields nowadays, right? It can be fighting your demons.
Right.
It can be fighting your laziness. Right?
Truth is so important. It is so incredibly important in every little thing you do. And I try my best in my life, even if, let's say I had a girlfriend who asked me, hey, do I look fat in this dress? If she did, I would say, yeah, man, it doesn't look the best on you. I think something else looks better on you.
Hey,
right?
That's a good cop-out, though.
Here's the thing. No, I'm serious. Right, here's why it's so important.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, she's asking you because she knows she doesn't look the best in that dress. She just wants you to make her feel better, right? So then now the next time you tell her the truth, she won't even be able to tell. She won't know if you're telling her the truth or not.
Right.
So even in the smallest little thing, it's like our duty to tell the truth.
Yes. But I do like that. The truth doesn't have to be destructive.
No, it doesn't. Like, look at
You the way you phrase that, for example.
Yeah.
Like, am I fat in this dress? Yes, you are. No, you don't say that. right. You say, I think you'd look better in something else. Right? You're not lying, and you're not destroying her either. You're building something. And this is the thing.
And you get better the more you practice.
Yeah, it's important.
So
Yeah, and then you realize the best solution is just silence.
We're late.
But no, I don't think the best
We're late.
solution is silence. I don't think the best solution is silence.
No, it was a joke. But it certainly is.
No matter who you're talking to, Jordan Peterson says the greatest adventure you could possibly have in your life is just telling the truth in everything you do. If you told the truth in everything you did, you would never have a dissatisfying career.
No, I agree.
Right? You would never get into the wrong degree. Oh, I wasted four years of my life studying the wrong thing. Oh, I'm in this job. I hate this job, man. I can't do it. The reason I'm talking about this is because these are things I've done.
Yeah, well, and every man, especially every human being, does.
Exactly. So it's like if I just said, you know what? Yeah, I got this nice job offer. Cool, thank God. But it's not for me, and I just didn't do it. Maybe God would have provided me with something better.
Of course.
Right.
Of course.
Who knows? So what I'm really trying to do is just tell the truth in everything I do.
And that's
If my next employer asks me, or if my current employer asks me, right? Hey, do you like this job? Is this your passion? I would tell them no. like no, it's not. Why am I doing this? I'll do it to the best of my ability. I will work really hard, make sure I provide more value to this company than what you're paying me, right? You're going to make a profit off of me. But, no, this isn't my passion. I have different passions. I have different areas of life that I strive in, right? Just do that and just see what happens. This is something, I'm trying to build up the courage to do. But I think if we can do that, relationships, career, mental health, everything will get better. And this kind of plays into the to destiny, right? Because God had like everything is predestined. Our actions. So in life, there's actions and there's experiences. The only thing we can control are our actions. We don't control our experiences. You could say that, you know, if I drink this coffee, right, I'm gonna experience like a caffeine rush. But that's been predestined for me. Maybe, like no matter what, there would have been coffee here today.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what, I would have, if it wasn't that job, I would have gotten another job that paid the same amount. Everything is predestined. So when you act, just act in a manner that you think God would please God. If you act in a manner that pleases God, that's the only thing you carry in this life.
Yeah.
Because everything else was going to happen to you anyway. So when you cheat somebody and you get something, don't think that wouldn't have come to you if you didn't cheat.
Right.
If you did it the right way, the proper way, it still would have come to you.
Yeah.
But now all you did different was that you earned a bad deed instead of a good one.
You know, you just reminded me of a beautiful story. There's this story. It's reported in the Islamic tradition. People can verify if it's true or not, but I think the message is exactly this, right? And there's a poor man who goes to the house of Ali ibn Abi Talib, the cousin of the Prophet, right? And he asks him, he says, do you have any money you can give me? So Ali radiallahu anhu says, I do. Let me go inside my house and let me check for you. So Ali goes inside his house and he's taking his time. He's looking to find these coins to give them and he can't find them. And the man is waiting there, you know, getting really frustrated. And he sees Ali's horse. So he just fetches the horse. And he leaves with him, right? He steals the horse, basically. Ali comes out, he says, where's the guy? His servant, I don't know. He's like, where's my horse? Realizes the guy took the horse, right? Tells his servant, he says, okay, here's this money, go buy a new horse. You know? Goes in the market, servant finds a horse, gives the guy the money, comes back, it's the same exact horse. And the thief ended up getting the money that Ali told him he would give him anyways, without committing a sin, right? Had the thief been patient enough to just wait a couple more minutes, Ali would have come and handed him that pouch of money as a gift. Instead, now he earned it through haram. He earned it through theft, right? And this relates to your story that it's gonna come to you, man.
Mm-hmm.
It's the best analogy I can give is like drowning in an ocean. If you're dropped in the middle of an ocean, what's your instinct gonna be? To swim as much as you can against the current, and the more you swim, the more you're gonna sink. But the moment that you just relax, you float. And this is what Allah does with us. If we try to fight the destiny that He's written for us, we will sink into this world. But if we just resign, hey, this is written for me, resign to it, then you float and He takes you.
Right.
The wave carries you, you know? SubhanAllah. And I think that really, to kind of bring it back to masculinity as well, I think that really does encompass what a man has to be. And he has to be a man of faith, someone who surrenders his will to Allah subhanahu
And only to God.
Only to God, nothing else.
And that also ties into telling the truth. Because when you realize that no matter what you do, what's coming to you is coming to you.
Right.
And all you can do is just act in the right way. Then you have no logical choice but to tell the truth. Nothing else would make sense. Because if you're not telling the truth, what are you doing? You're fighting destiny.
Yeah.
Because destiny is truth. Right?
Correct.
That book that God has is truth.
Correct.
So when you don't tell the truth, it's like you're fighting that.
And this is one of the strongest qualities a man can have.
Yeah.
Being a man of his word, telling the truth, abiding by this truth, having it as a core principle of his life, right? Faith, integrity, truth, responsibility. And there's another ayah that I want to mention in the Quran that really emphasizes this point. And it says, a real man, I'm paraphrasing here, is he who when the call to prayer is given will drop his trade and he will go and answer God instead. When he hears Allahu Akbar, and he's in his business or in his shop or working, and he hears that call to prayer, he better know who he owes his time to and his purpose to. And it's not the business. So the real man, Allah tells us, the one who drops his trade, is not worried about his trade. He knows that trade is going to be there for him one way or the other. And he resigns back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when Allah calls him back. This is one of the most fundamental principles of manhood, I believe, that's stripped away even in most of today's circles and discussions.
Locking in on the right areas that need to be locked in on. It's fine to be locked in on work. Allah tells you to do that. Right? I believe, again, the first words are Iqra, right? From the Quran, read, attain knowledge, right? Work. How do you attain knowledge? Is by working, by studying, by working hard for things, right? Tying your camel. You need to do.
But what follows after Iqra? Iqra
Bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. In the name of your Lord, who is created.
Right?
So, giving your due justice, locking in, because knowing that at the end of the day, this world is very temporary. What you make out of it in the dunya, sure, that's going to only benefit you here in the dunya. But you can make whatever you target and whatever you strive for in the dunya a twofold, a double-edged sword. Make it both something that can satisfy you here in the dunya, as a man, as a woman in society, in a halal way, that will also secure your afterworld, right?
And sometimes you don't have the choice, or you don't have the luxury to choose the thing that satisfies both this world and the next. Sometimes you have to sacrifice your pleasures, your comfort, your world for what's more important, for the eternal. And that's the prophetic qualities that we all look up to. That's the hero. Mm-hmm. The hero is the one who sacrifices himself.
It's true here.
For the greater good.
This is the archetype that you find across
myths, legend, anything. You look at the deepest recesses of history, and these are the men
from the beginning of time. Right, the story of the one who sacrifices. I think, you know what? I actually think that's one of the things we miss nowadays. I think we've entered this ultra pragmatic, ultra gray and realistic world. We lack inspiration. We lack reading the tales of the past and of the heroic feats of our predecessors. But it inspires us.
The myth of the hero, though, is realistic.
It is, but I think
it's the most real.
I agree.
Yeah,
and I think this society, intentionally, in my opinion, has tried to convince us that that's an unachievable result. When we have real stories of people achieving it all the time. The prophets, who we believe in as Muslims, right? As believers, we believe in the prophets of God, all of them. Are they not the embodiment of that archetype? Fighting against the greatest of oppression, the greatest of tyranny, the greatest of falsehood, that ever graced, that ever destroyed this world, let's say? Yes, from the very beginning. Adam and Satan, right? Moses and Pharaoh, Abraham and Nimrod. Abraham and Satan too. Moses and Satan. Noah and his society, right? 900 years of preaching.
Right.
Only being able to convert a handful of people. Imagine the perseverance and the patience someone needs.
And building an ark when rain hasn't fallen yet.
And being ridiculed for it.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. That sometimes this society will ridicule you for being upon truth. Because this society has determined that truth is what the masses say it is. Where the believer differs with that is, no, truth is what the Almighty says it is. And that's what you abide by. That's what rebalances the world.
SubhanAllah. I think as long as we can, again, maintain this, this ideal, this idea of who we wish to strive to be as men in society, right? Who do we want to be for our families? Who do we want to be for ourselves? Work on it every day.
Right.
You don't need to complain to a therapist. If anybody's having like suicidal ideations, obviously, of course, reach out to somebody, like you should in certain circumstances. But don't let that be your main crutch, right? Find other avenues that strengthen you as a man. You know, like, so you mentioned your app, by the way, and I do kind of want to wrap with you mentioning maybe at least the core principles behind your drive of why you're creating this app, how you believe this might strengthen masculinity, and in my personal belief, why this is a perfect example of why gearing your masculinity towards a set goal is actually healthy for not only yourself, but could also potentially be healthy for so many other people. So please, if you could just talk about it for a couple of minutes or whatever.
Right. So the motivation for making this app was that I was a little bit like that person I described, you know? I was in my head like, hey man, like what is the reason that I'm over here not able to figure out what I really care about? What goal could I work towards that would just make me not care about work anymore, right? What would give me purpose and meaning and fulfillment? How do I get over this, like, you know, recent, like, episode of misfortune, like something that, you know, hurt me? How do I do that? And the way I dealt with it by myself was, I was like, okay, I'm not gonna cry. I will never cry. And I didn't. And I said, I'm gonna hit the gym and just get strong. And I said, I'm gonna write down everything in my mind and try to figure out what my problems are and solve them. So that's what I did. And like, I wasn't getting anywhere though. I mean, I got stronger, I got bigger. I didn't cry. I figured out a couple issues I had in my mind. But that wasn't enough for me to actually change things around myself. It's all in my head. In a way, it's just, what do you say? It's like, you know, you're pleasing yourself mentally, right? So
yeah, it's just like giving yourself a check.
Right, that's all you're doing. So as soon as I started doing things that move the needle towards where I want to be, right, which is I want to make a positive impact on the world. I want to make sure I can provide for my family, right, my parents and then my future family, my little brother. I want to make sure I'm a good example, a good role model for other young men, or God willing, you know, my son or daughter.
Sure.
So yeah, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna work. I'm just gonna work my butt off, right? So I was putting in like 14, 15-hour days, back to back, and it was awesome. And I felt great because I was actually moving the needle towards my future goals. So at the end of the day, it's just action, dude. Like, yeah, like sometimes I'll think about, you know, like a recent bad episode, or like a bad episode from my, you know, hidden past. Okay. The more you think about it, the deeper you sink.
Right.
And the harder it is to get momentum again.
I agree.
So that's the motivation for this app. It's just about how can you harness your masculine ideal, that masculine energy, and then point it towards the target that you want to shoot. So yeah, I basically created this AI that understands you on a very deep level, on a fundamental level, understands the kind of man you are, right, and the kind of man you want to become, most importantly. And then it basically figures out what different domains are you active and engaged in your life, right? Fitness, health, mental health, relationships, family, school, work, etc. Right? So then it encapsulates each of these domains and creates an agent for each one. And the biggest problem is that, you know, like, when you have so many things going on, it's hard to keep track of what to do when. It's hard to keep track of everything at the same time. So basically that's what this helps you do. And it never forgets who you are. It remembers everything. It remembers your mistakes. So that way, you know, a few months down the line when you make the same mistake again, it says, hey, on July 1st of 2025, you know, you did this. It's the exact same thing. And this is the pattern.
Yeah, it holds you accountable, essentially.
Right, and it tells you what the pattern is. It sends you reminders to do certain things at certain times.
Yeah.
And it figures out your weaknesses and vulnerabilities, and then gives you the smallest step to take forward, so you gain momentum. That's all about momentum and action. That's all we should care about as men. Tell the truth, act on it, leave the rest to God.
You know, this is a beautiful idea.
Really.
I think it made me think of a couple things. I want to end on this, right?
Please.
Because what you described in this app is what any man is supposed to do with another man, a friend that he cares about, right? Keep him accountable, push him to strive, push him towards action, sharpen him, right? Why do I think this app is a beautiful idea? Because we live in an ultra-isolated society. And a lot of men don't have access to that kind of support system. Now, inshallah, they find it, right? Because there's nothing like human connection at the end of the day. But in the absence of that, I think something like this is going to be very, very beneficial for a lot of young men, especially, and this lost generation, right? This bubble generation. So is the app in? Did you launch it yet, or is it?
So I launched it to my test users. Basically, I think the UI, the user interface, everything you look at and see, I think it needs a lot of work. So basically, I'm just gonna have like 10 people use it in the beginning, see how everybody likes it, and just make the changes that people really want, and then launch it to the creator.
Keep us updated.
Yeah. Well,
it's on my phone right now. It's on test mode, so I can add you guys as users if you want.
Yeah, we would love
Are
to
you
join
allowed
you.
to say the name, or do you want to say? The name?
I'm calling it His Codex.
His code.
How do you
His
like
Codex.
that?
Well, yeah, we'll look for it in the App Store in the future, inshallah, and know that we want to go and help you build this. So,
Cool.
Any way that we can help, please let us join in on it.
All right, absolutely.
I'd love to be one of those.
The more the merrier.
Well, this is that's positive masculinity right there for you guys. We want to go and direct each other in the right positive direction. Thank you so much for watching this, and please like, subscribe, follow us, and
Stay hard.
keep making dua for us, please, guys. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.